Hello everybody and welcome to ServiceNow Expeditions. We explore the ServiceNow universe one step at a time so that you don't have to get lost in the void. Today your guides Ivan, Mike and Ula. And for today's session we have prepared the next topic from the sector of the business rules. So Ula, what is this going to be about?
We're continuing about our travels with the business rules. So last time we dove into before business rules, and today we're going to look at after business rules.
Great. We have already made some preparations, so I will briefly go through them to highlight the setup. We have already created our new expeditions record, so let me open it. And as you can see here, down below, we have two related lists connected. That means that we have created two additional tables for this session. One table is about expedition ratings and allow us to leave opinion about the expedition after the expedition is closed. And another one is about expedition tasks that are created for this particular expedition. However, we will more jump into details how we are doing it a little bit later. So Ula, what is our first case?
Our purpose today is to look at this expedition, and we have expedition crew field. You can highlight this one. It's a reference to users that are part of this expedition. And our use case is that once this expedition is completed, they should submit some kind of rating of was it this expedition satisfying or unsatisfying or whatever.
We also need to prepare this business rules sector as a destination, and now we are in full.
Let's check out the business rule that we have prepared to get some understanding.
Amazing idea. So I'm going to switch to the ServiceNow Studio, identify the business rule responsible for the first use case. And here we have a little bit of code. What do we say about it? But first of all, let us jump to when to run to check the condition.
Yeah.
As we are now talking about after business rules, in the field when, we need to select after. And of course, as we discussed last time, we need to try to uniquely specify the condition so it's triggered exactly at the moment where we need it. And our current condition is expedition crew field should contain some personas, and the active field of the record should switch to false. So this is normally happening when, let's say, a record switches its life cycle from one of active states like open, new, or even resolved into the final closed stage. Now about the code.
What we're doing here is that we are checking the expedition crew field. We get all the crew members, and then we loop through all the entries in this field, and we generate a new rating record for each of the members, where the participant is the person of the crew, and the expedition is the current expedition record. So that's the reference back to this expedition. And then we create a new record in this other table.
Just a couple of words about the code itself and the fields, right? So we have a list collector field on the form, and it has multiple values inside. And for those who don't know how those values are stored, they are stored as a comma-separated list of sysids in this case.
Yeah.
Can you just click on a label, then we can see it?
Yeah. This one. Yeah. So we can see with the beautiful tool Ascend Utils inside of a pop-up window what is actually inside, and inside we see the list of comma-separated sysids of those users who we have selected here. Perfect. Now also you might wonder why sometimes in the code you can see new records created using the newRecord method, and some of them are created with the initialize record. What do you want to say a couple of words about this?
Basically, they have the same meaning. There are some smaller differences. newRecord uses the default values stored on the other table, whereas initializes creates an entirely blank record. So they have some different applications.
Yeah, if you want to make sure that your initializers, right, and default logic kicks in, and it's important for you to do this in order to make the creation of a field easier, or for any other reasons, make sure that you use newRecord. And if you want to be fully in control of everything, you can use initialize.
Yeah.
All right, where do we go from here, guys?
Let's also talk about the main thing why we're choosing to use an after rule here is that we are actually working with records on another table or another record. Just we're not using before business rule because we're not working with the expedition record this time. We're working with other records. So this is an important highlight.
Yeah, I presume this is the main point, right, for the after business rules. You are not working with the current record. You're starting, your job is done with the current, right? You now need to do something based on the information or based the entire event of which is connected to this record. And that's why you use the
most
after.
Basic programming thing.
Yeah.
If this, then that. Do you want to move on and see how it's behaving when we actually
maybe
do
just
change?
one question or just one addition for a real life scenario? I would also validate whether the sysid you are extracting from the array is really representing an active user. Maybe imagine doing your expedition, a crew member is dying, so then the user is inactive.
My God.
So and then it makes no sense anymore to give any rating, right?
Yeah.
But a more urgent case, I know that, for example, the watcher field on a task table, not only sysids are stored there, but also email addresses. So if you really want to be sure that you have a sysid for a user, you should validate it before.
Okay, in this case, we'll just add a pseudocode line so that we know what has to be done. And for our users, it could be a very good homework. So let's move on to the use case demonstration, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saving it. Now I am opening the record, and the record is active. And now we want to close it, right?
Yeah.
And make it active. So as soon as I press save, we should see new records created in the expedition ratings table. And that's how we know that rule worked. Let's do it. And as soon as I saved it, after I changed the state to closed and unmarked the active field, we got our form updated, reloaded, and now we see that inside of the expedition rating, we have 3 new rating record which are inviting us, or basically these guys, to participate in the survey.
Yeah. And also moving on to more validations, you could just simply activate this record again. And then perform the same maneuver again.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So in this case, you should also validate on the other, maybe you need to validate on the other table. Does the rating already exist?
Or one of the good things is probably when the condition changes that we canceling the active service, right? That normally what you can see in the real world, like let's say in change management, especially when you switch between stages, and the currently active tasks or approvals might get canceled. And there are lots of kind of things where all those validations are working.
Yeah, let's showcase one more thing. Let's remove all the ratings for now, just to highlight another example. And switch back to the business rule. So what we did here is we got the values of the participants from the current value of the expedition crew. But as you can see in the first line of the code, you have 2 objects available, current and previous. Let's see if we can simulate something with the previous object instead.
Let me change the current reference object to previous. Now let's get back. So I presume if we activate the record like this,
Yeah.
and then we
Change the crew,
change the
remove,
crew,
remove
and
one member, and then set it to inactive. Would it create 2 or 3 ratings?
let's find out. Yeah, still 3.
Yeah, and that's the difference between the current value and the previous value, because it was 3 members.
Yeah.
But you saved it and changed it to 2, but it's still using the old value. So you, in the after rules, you can manipulate and use both the current value and what it was before it was saved.
Yeah, great example.
Okay.
And by the way, this manually activating and deactivating of the record could also be a candidate for an after business rule, so that you don't need to uncheck and check this manually based on the state, close, and so on.
Yeah.
By the way, this table is not happen to inherited from the task table, right? It's an individual custom table.
Yeah.
We have
because on the task table there's an inbuilt mechanism which would automatically set the active field to true or false based on the state. So if you don't inherit it from the task table, you need to implement this kind of after business rule by yourself. Then
this is also highlights one of those things that are mentioned inside of the ServiceNow courses, like ServiceNow System Admin, where you decide or what do I do, whether I extend the table, right, or I'm creating a new one. And one of the things that you need to keep in mind, if you want to reuse the logic that is already present on the table, it's always a good idea to extend. And this is one of those use cases, right, with the task table, basically where a lot of other tables are extended from it, like incident, change, etc. And they are all utilizing this default logic.
That was it for my example. I believe you have prepared something too.
I have one more example. This is one of those use cases which you can also always see in the real world. And every time, let's say we create a record, in our case, it is an expedition record, and we are done with it, right? Like in the space industry, when the rocket launched, kicked off, right? What do we do next? The next step is always like initiating the first stage, second stage, etc. And in our case, we want to do also something that is kind of in dependency with the record creation event itself, right? And in our case, we want to create some specific tasks for our crew. And for that, we have created one additional business rule, which is called auto-spawn mission tasks on launch. Let me just open it and say a couple of words about it. And by the way, activate it. This rule is checking that the state is changing into progress. This can only happen, of course, on their after the record is inserted. So we are not monitoring the insert event. We are only checking it on the update. And inside of the code, we have a little bit of logic stored. So first of all, we have a templates array, which contains a couple of simple objects which are briefly describing the tasks. Then inside of the loop, for loop, we are iterating through this array of templates for our tasks and creating them using the initialize method, right? We have already mentioned the differences between newRecord and initialize, so make sure you remember that. We are setting up a reference to the expedition record we are using as a parent by parent referencing to the current object and getting its unique value. By the way, Ulla, do you want to say a couple of words about the different options of obtaining the sysid of the record? So in this case, I'm using the get unique value. What else do you see in the real world?
In my opinion, this is the only way to go.
Yeah, because what get unique value does, right? It's
It's a built-in API call, gets the sysid of the record,
Yes, and
of the
what
current record.
what is very important in comparison to the, let's say, current sysid, right? Because current sysid, if you make, let's say, if you use I don't know, a background script and try to see a type of this record using a command like type of, you'll see that this will not be a string. And what getUnique does, it's returning you explicitly a string value, which you can use for in your code and or in your logic. So it's a very important thing. So I will also mark it here as important. Now, why am I using, let's say, this template with objects, right? It's to provide an extensibility, right? Every time I would like to add one additional task, I just need to copy the element, add a couple of words about the short description, and assign it to the team, and it will be automatically handled by the same for loop here. So this is why. Then you may also ask, how the hell are we assigning the assign group if we only have a name? And for that, I have prepared one simple helper function, which is also stored inside of this rule and called find group, where you can see down below. It makes an additional lookup call to the sysuser group table, looks it up per name, and returns it back. All right. One more thing to always keep in mind is that it's kind of a common practice that many ServiceNow applications are communicating with other components of the system and also from the after business rules using the event mechanism. And this is what I have here. However, I commented it out because I don't have any use case for it at the moment. And with the help of the Glide System EventQueue method, we can initiate an event and send it into the event queue, where if needed by someone, right, if there's some logic associated with this event, it will be
launch party.
Yeah.
Basically, you don't need any use case because you are just providing a way for other applications to connect to your applications via that sys event. So you can basically always fire it and anyone else can consume it.
Yeah. Yes, and just a couple of words about the event queue method itself. You see that the first parameter is the event name. You need to have this event registered in event registry on your platform. Here. Then the next one is a current record. Then we have so-called parm1 and parm2 parameters. I will not stay here. There is a fifth parameter. So if you know what it is, please tell us about it in the comments below our video. Great. Now let us check what will happen after I switch the... Oh, let me check.
Save.
Navigate. Base. And this will be for the ServiceNow expedition leaders. Let me just update the fourth task, leaders. Great, so now I'm going to switch back to our record. And as you can see, currently we do not have any active tasks. And as soon as I switch to in progress, we should see a couple of new tasks. Great. Oh, yeah. And
this is also something we should talk about. Always test your business rules, because the first time they run, if there are any access rights that are required, then they are granted the first time it's executed. So
exactly,
always test yourself.
This is what you see here. We tried to initiate the event, issue the event, and then we see that the first operation failed because there were no cross-scope privileges for our app, and it was granted. Now, when we reload it and do the same thing again, by the way, again, right, a good thing that Ulla mentioned about the validation. So if we change the states, also is a good idea probably to cancel the tasks, but let us to initiate the in progress state again and see if they will be created. Yeah.
Not defined.
The event is still not defined.
Yeah, because my event was not defined in the application registry. Always keep in mind that as well.
Let's switch back to the business rule itself and to the when to run. Ordering is kind of important in all business rules, just not after a business rule, but might be particularly important here because you might have, as we discussed on our previous episode, you might have some other business rule that would cancel the transaction. So make sure that the ordering is correct so you don't create or update records in other tables that shouldn't be updated in case there's later a business rule that would cancel this transaction. So be mindful of the ordering here.
I will add the link to the order guide from ServiceNow, which is showing also how in which order are different components processed. It should help you to navigate your logic and your components inside of your ServiceNow instance.
And I also want to add another important aspect. In these examples, we haven't done so much. We have created 3 tasks, for example. There are other scenarios where you might want to do some more extensive operations, which takes longer, maybe not 1 second, but 10 seconds, or maybe also a minute, because due to any integration, it could be that your session gets stuck because an after business rule will be executed until the end, and only then the user gets back his session. So it might be that with the extensive after business rules, the user has to wait, and then he gets this banner with a running transaction.
Yes, this is a very, very important thing. Well, guys, that was it for our 11th ServiceNow expedition into the world of, into the universe, by the way, of ServiceNow about after business rules. So key takeaways for you to pick up from this session. First of all, use after business rule to trigger some logic after or based on the current record. Don't use after business rule for any time-consuming operation, as it's done in the same transaction, and until the job is done, this session will be locked. If you want to trigger more actions outside of business rule, don't forget to use events. And with that being said, we thank you, and we will be seeing you in our next expeditions. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.